Alone in his room, Jake was engrossed in his video game, the eerie glow of the screen casting long shadows across the walls. The only other presence in the room was his cat, Cookie, who often sought refuge under Jake's bed during thunderstorms. Suddenly, amidst the sounds of virtual gunfire, Jake heard a faint scratching coming from the floorboards outside his door. She must have been outside of his door wanting to come in, he thought. Assuming it was Cookie, seeking attention, Jake paused his game and got up to open his bedroom door. But when he swung it open, there was no sign of Cookie. Confused, Jake ventured out into the hallway, calling Cookie's name softly. The house was silent, the air thick with an unexplained tension. As he made his way through the rooms, Jake's heart quickened its pace, a growing sense of unease settling in the pit of his stomach. Unable to find Cookie, he decided to return to his room and fetch a snack from the pantry. As he sat on the edge of his bed, munching on a cookie, he heard it again, the scratching sound, this time accompanied by faint cries echoing from the back of the house. Setting down his snack, Jake's curiosity outweighed his fear as he cautiously made his way towards the source of the sounds. "Cookie," he called out. He was startled when he felt something brush against his ankles. There was Cookie, at his feet looking up at him. He gulped when the realization hit him. The scratching sound continued. It had not been Cookie. He warily followed the sound and stopped when he came to the bottom of the attic stairs. It was coming from up there. He took a deep breath and trekked up the stairs. With each step, the scratching grew louder, more frantic. He reached the end of the stairway, heart pounding in his chest, and pushed open the attic door. The cries intensified, mingling with the sound of something scraping against the wooden door. Sweat beaded on Jake's brow as he hesitated before fully opening it. As the attic room came into his view and his eyes worked to adjust to the darkness, Jake shuddered when he began to make out a crouched-down figure in the corner of the room. His eyes widened in horror as the thing whipped its head around to look at him. With a strangled cry, Jake stumbled backward, slamming the door shut with a resounding thud. He could hear the thing charge at the door, scratching and wailing in frustration, its unearthly cries echoing through the empty house. Jake raced down the stairs to his bedroom and threw the blanket over himself in an attempt to drown out the deafening cries. But suddenly, the wailing and scratching stopped, and there was only silence. Jake cautiously removed the blanket from his face. Everything seemed normal now. Had he just imagined the whole thing? He was once again startled as an even louder scratching began. It was coming from underneath his bed. "Cookie?" he asked, hoping this time it really was just his cat. He gulped and slowly leaned down to check under his bed. He then caught a glimpse of movement, and there was Cookie, standing in his doorway. Her eyes were fixed on something under Jake's bed. Quivering, Jake slowly turned his head to look. But before he could process what he saw, he felt a rough, cold hand grab a hold of him and pull him to the floor. Screaming, Jake fought with all he could, but his strength did not match up to that of the creatures. It forcefully pulled him into the deep shadows under the bed, and together they disappeared. Jake was never seen or heard from again. Alone in her dimly lit house, Lily was writing a paper on her laptop when she heard her mother's voice calling her name from the other room. "Yes, Mom?" she asked, but there was no answer. She shrugged it off and continued working until her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. Chills crept over her as she read the words on the screen. It said, "I will be home late tonight, honey. There are plenty of leftovers in the fridge for dinner. Love you." If her mom was still at work, then who just called her name? Cold dread gripped Lily's stomach as she crept toward where she had heard the voice. "Hello?" she nervously asked. The hallway stretched like a tunnel of shadows. Peering into the darkness, she saw a figure. It looked like her mom. "Mom, are you home early?" she asked, but there was no response. Shakily, Lily reached for the hall light. It turned on to reveal something horrifying. Standing at the end of the hallway was not her mother, but a grotesque imitation of her, tall, lanky, and skinless. Its mouth ripped open in a jagged grin, black holes for eyes staring into her soul. Lily's breath caught in her throat as the thing spoke. "Don't worry, sweetie," it croaked, mimicking her mother's voice, each word dripping with malice. "Mommy is here." Paralyzed with fear, Lily watched as the abomination began to crawl along the wall, bones cracking with each movement. Its wails echoed through the house, sending shivers down her spine. With trembling hands, Lily fumbled for her phone, her mother's number, her lifeline in the darkness. But as she dialed, the thing drew closer, its twisted form contorting with every step. Tears streamed down Lily's face. Summoning every ounce of courage, she turned and fled, the thing's mocking laughter echoing in her ears. She raced through the house, the sound of its bone-cracking pursuit close behind. As she reached for the front door, gasping for air, she felt a hand on her shoulder ripping her backward. A few hours later, Lily's mother returned home from work. She immediately noticed something was amiss. Out-of-place objects scattered the floor. "Lily," she called. "Yes, Mother?" She heard. Relief washed over her. "What is up with this mess?" she asked. But there was silence. She walked to Lily's room to find it empty. "Where are you?" she called out, but there was no response. She searched the entire house, but her daughter was nowhere to be found. She was completely confused. But little did she know, she would never be reunited with her daughter again. For in that house, something unspeakable lurked. A mimic hungry for fear, wearing the guise of loved ones. An entity who claimed the soul of her daughter, and will soon do the same to her. Dr. Harrison, a diligent coroner, embarked on another autopsy with routine detachment. Everything seemed perfectly normal until he checked under the man's tongue. There, he found a branded symbol. Consulting investigators, he unraveled the chilling truth. The symbol appeared to be the mark of a notorious Satanist cult, known for summoning malevolent entities. They believed that the purpose of these evil beings was to manipulate the living to do heinous acts for them. The investigators warned the coroner that the body should be burned immediately because misfortunate events have been known to occur associated with that symbol. Harrison ignored the warning. Dismissing it as superstition, he proceeded, his skepticism overriding caution. But as twilight descended, a dark specter emerged, shadowing Harrison's every move. A silent and unseen harbinger of impending doom. Oblivious to it, he finished the autopsy and went home. Later that night, Harrison was preparing dinner when a knock on his front door pierced the silence. Without a thought, he flung open the door. He gasped. Before him stood the dead man who he had just sewn up on the autopsy table a couple of hours ago. The dead body bared a huge, evil smile, a grotesque mockery of life. Eyes vacant, yet accusing. Frozen in terror, Harrison recoiled, his mind fraying at the seams. The dead man's lips parted, emitting a guttural rasp. "You've trespassed into our domain, coroner," it intoned. With a surge of desperation, Harrison slammed the door shut, heart pounding in his chest. But the dead man burst through the door, charging at Harrison. Thinking quickly, he grabbed the toaster and smashed it over the man's head. Still catching his breath, Harrison's mind ran wild with disbelief. The tales were true, he thought. He reached for the phone, but paused as his eyes glanced over the now lifeless body on his kitchen floor. Doing a double take, he stared in disbelief, for he could not comprehend what he saw. What lay on the floor in front of him was not the body of the dead man, but that of his wife's, surrounded by a pool of blood. Harrison's world crumbled as he realized that the entity had succeeded in its pursuit of manipulation. Defying the warnings, he had unleashed forces beyond comprehension, dooming himself to a fate far worse than death, for he had unknowingly claimed the life of his precious wife.